Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Gary Hawkins, author, keynote speaker, and strategic advisor in the fast moving consumer goods retail industry. Some of you may know me from my book, Bionic Retail, where I talk about the inflection point that we've reached on the exponential growth of technology. Retailers today face two very different futures, either harnessing accelerating innovation to shape and create the future, or risk sliding into what I call retail purgatory. Having an inspired vision is really just the start, though. The real work is setting aside restrictive practices, dismantling outdated beliefs, and committing to action. And that brings us to today's focus, slaying the silos. In my white paper by that name, I talk about why silos, merchandising, marketing, supply chain, e-commerce, and so on, are slowing us down, and why connecting the business with accurate, trusted data is the foundation for AI and automation to truly work. I'm joined today by two leaders with unique perspectives on this transformation. Doug Baker, Vice President of Industry Relations at FMI, the Food Industry Association, works closely with grocery retailers across the country, helping them navigate disruption and seize opportunities in a fast-changing market. And Lori Schafer, CEO of Digital Wave Technology, a company rethinking retail technology from the ground up. Their AI native One platform unifies data, embeds AI into the core, and helps retailers operate faster, smarter, and more consistently across all their channels. So let's jump in. Doug, you see firsthand how grocery retailers operate today. What's the current reality of silos in the industry, and how is that impacting their ability to innovate and deliver on consumer expectations?
Yeah, Gary, thanks. And it's a pleasure to be with both of you today.
Good to see you, Doug. Good to
Yeah.
see you, Gary.
Unfortunately, silos are still much of the norm. As much as retailers are working on to remove them, it's you see merchandising, as you mentioned, merchandising, marketing, supply chain operate in separate systems within their own data sets. So, this unfortunately creates a duplication of effort, delays in bringing products to market, and inconsistent information for consumers. And even the most creative promotional ideas can be slowed by these operational bottlenecks. It is a high priority for all of the retailers, and leading retailers are realizing that innovation requires cross-functional alignment, especially as we move into more sophisticated AI platforms. So shared data and shared objectives, not just isolated tech upgrades.
So that's a really good description of sort of the challenge that I think faces retail today. But let's connect that challenge to how retail industry competes. If breaking down the silos is step one, step two is speed, and speed today really means automation. Doug, you said automation is no longer optional. Why is that? How do you see it reshaping processes and the workforce?
Really, it's as you mentioned, it's the speed. Consumers' expectation for speed, accuracy, and personalization continues to climb. Labor shortages and cost pressures means that teams can't just work harder, they need to work smarter, and you got to have that unified, clean, and accurate amount of data to do that. Automation, that removes repetitive manual tasks, freeing teams from to focus on strategies and service. But it's not about replacing people. It's augmenting them. It makes them more efficient. It allows them to accomplish more in their day. It gives merchandisers and marketers and planners the ability to act faster with better and more complete insights.
So it's really making retail bionic.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
So, we've talked about automation as a necessity today, but what's the best way for a retailer to identify which processes to automate first without overwhelming their teams? Because, there's a lot to this transformation. It touches everything from, technology to structural transformation to cultural transformation. So there's a lot going on here. Lori, let's hear from you. What's your thoughts around how retailers identify where to begin this automation journey?
Thanks, Gary. I think let me just start by saying your paper "Slaying the Silos" is awesome. It's music to my ears because that's exactly from a technology standpoint what we are trying to do at Digital Wave by having this overall idea of one technology platform, one master data management set with native AI built into it. We are, if I could think of a few major retailers we're working with now, and I think about one of the grocers that is actually an international grocer, a huge one. And the thing that I think retailers need to be able to do is to, first of all, I believe in starting with executive sponsorship at the top of the company. I think that's essential. I also think that the way to get started is to look at, first and foremost, start with business outcome. So look across the company, target cost savings, revenue lift, or customer experience improvements. And I like to say use a 2x2 framework, which means prioritize the processes that are both high impact and easy to automate. So start small and also start with something that's going to give you a high impact. Things like product onboarding, product attribution, pricing and promotion updates, invoice reconciliation, customer data deduplication, things like that you can get your arms around. I'm going to go back to a couple of live examples of companies we are working with right now, back to the very large international grocer. They started with saying, hey, we need to get our product attribution, the attributes for each product, we need to make them better and be able so that people can search on the right things for those products. And we need to be able to do that at a much higher speed. And by putting in generative AI capabilities, what we've been able to do in that case is reduce their time by 40 to 60% in terms of time that they're spending on working with creating those product attributes and making them very searchable and applicable to their business. They have 70% fewer errors, and they're able to get these to the shelf in a 30 to 40% faster time frame, so faster speed to shelf. That's one example. I think of another example where the retailer said we price by attributes. And in that case, they thought they had a price optimization problem. They didn't. They really had where the people in their groups were having trouble and getting frustrated were in all the time they were spending on having to figure out the attributes in the pricing system. Well, again, being able to have all of those pieces together, we're able to be to auto attribute for pricing and then do the price optimization. And again, it's saving them an enormous amount of time and it's getting their pricing more accurate.
All right. Neat. So, Doug, around automation, what are your thoughts around where retail should begin to tackle this?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing some real good success around, processes that are repetitive, that are rules-based tasks that have, highest operational friction. And then, you can expand into more complex decisions. I think the one thing that Lori said really well that I would add on to is look in your P&L where you have leakage, right? Where is it costing you time, money, profit, or sales also? When AI came out, everybody was just like, we need to get AI in. Well, but what problem or opportunity are you trying to solve for, right? So do that solve that Lori mentioned is look where it's going to make you more efficient. Look where it's going to make you more profitable. Look where it's going to remove some pain that's currently being felt by your organization, whether it be in workforce or tasks. And then you're going to start seeing, and you'll learn. And that's the most important thing is learning before you take on some of these more complex decisions, and then work with your third-party partners. Many of them are embedding AI into their system. So you might, as a retailer, think you're not using AI, but just because you have third-party solution providers that are supporting your business, you very well probably are.
Mhm.
Yeah. So no, I think you're absolutely right. But I think you also point to another, what I think is an issue here, that while retailers are knowingly or not using AI in some of their different capabilities, right? Many of them are still stuck in these silos and still working with just the data in these silos. And until retailers really begin to unify that data, bring it together, get it cleaned up, they're not going to be able to take full advantage of what AI has to offer and realize all the performance gains possible here. Lori, back to something you mentioned that, the need for automation to really scale innovation. But this all is based on the quality of the data feeding all these capabilities. We've talked about master data management and why that is so important today, especially an MDM powered by AI. Could
Mhm.
you give us a couple thoughts around that, what you're seeing?
Sure. And again, I've been in AI for my entire career. First, the machine learning type of AI and simulation and those sorts of things in the grocery industry back in the 1980s, all the way till now. And now we're in generative AI and agentic AI, and it keeps developing faster than it's ever developed before. What again, the thing that we are addressing at Digital Wave, because I feel so strongly about it, is that AI has to have a foundation that is rock solid. It's like building a house on sand in a hurricane. In Florida, I think I live in Florida, and if you build a house and you don't have the pilings to put in to make it rock solid, the rest of the house, all those other systems are going to crash down if the data isn't right in the first place. So think of it as AI is only as good as the data it runs on. And if you have different silos, you can be repeating that data in 10 different locations with 10 different types of attributes, and the data is not necessarily clean, it's inconsistent. And so what master data management does is and I think you need to start there, it first of all allows you to provide clean and consistent data across the entire enterprise. The other thing that I believe is that the traditional master data management, frankly, boring, sitting in IT somewhere. And what's happening now is that there is master data management that is AI native. And what that means is that you've got AI built into the foundation. So you're creating the single source of truth across your entire enterprise with one golden record. Think of it that way, so that your customer data, your product data, your pricing, your descriptions, everything, there's one place. And that master data management system automatically deduplicates, cleans the data, makes sure there's no misspellings, makes sure that everything is just right before you then try to add AI to merchandising, marketing, and so forth. So I think that's a huge issue that a lot of people miss. They start putting AI on top of different solutions,
Yeah.
but their underlying data is messy in the first place. And Gartner provided a study that said that if you can do this right, data errors. If you don't do it right, data errors cost about 15 to 25% of revenue. If just in the sense of trying to find where all the problems are. So I'm a big believer in automating with a clean data foundation at the beginning.
And retail certainly has a data quality problem.
Yes, it does.
So, we just touched on something a few minutes ago that, a growing number of retailers have already invested in AI tools, either, specifically or in solutions that they're currently using that their solution providers have woven AI into. But many times the retailers are struggling to see the real impact of this. Doug, any thoughts around how retailer can tell if the issue is with the tech itself or the way it's integrated, or maybe to Lori's point, it's a data issue?
Yeah, I mean, it's so here's one good thing I want to underline this conversation with is, we just completed some research and spent 2 days with the Technology Executive Committee. The number one opportunity or the number one focus area for them is data harmonization. That really, and quite frankly, it surprised several of them that it rose to the top of the list, but they really sort of focused on that activity. Yeah, I think the other biggest issue that they're having right now is being able to identify whether or not that investment actually is paying off. And so being able to focus and go backwards on that strategy, I think, is extremely important to understand where is the issue? Is it in the execution or is it in the data that's going into it? And, we've talked about all the reasons why that data is probably not working. But we're also seeing that, grocers providing some online and customer delivery, many retailers need to outsource this function and get to it with a third party as quickly as possible. And that's creating some inconsistencies in data as well. So starting to bring that stuff back in, starting to own the foundation of that activity, and then building out from inward, you're starting to see some more benefits. But identifying ROI has been something that has slowed that investment down along the way.
Yeah. So, I've been in, as we all have, in the retail industry for many years. And, I've heard retailers talking about, data challenges for many, many years. There's still, as you just called out, Doug, sort of top of the list of challenges that they've identified. But are you beginning to see more retailers working from, let's call it more of a unified data core, or is it still, pockets of innovation occurring in different places across the enterprise, but not really unified in their approach?
Yeah, it's definitely more, probably still heavily focused on pockets of innovation. Unifying data, we talk about it as though it's a relatively easy activity. It's not. I mean, we have some retailers that, just in their warehouse management systems, they have 3 different warehouse management systems in the same facility,
Yeah.
right? So and that's a huge investment, right? And so if you add all of these activities that the organization has to invest in, it's where do you apply the dollars to get the biggest focus? So we are seeing some still much of it being pocket innovation where they're starting to find some benefits. But I think that's also goes back to our original and what Lori was saying. Where do I focus then? How do I keep moving so that I'm not paralyzed and I don't do anything and I don't start showing some benefits from investing in AI? So the worst thing to do is just to sit there and continue to work on your roadmap as well. Do something, right? Because that's where you're going to learn, you're going to improve, you're going to understand what data you need and how you need to make sure all of those attributes that are available to that data are going to provide you the best value.
Yeah. And, I think you point to something really important here that, a lot of the industry, I don't think yet fully comprehends just how disruptive AI is and is going to be as we continue forward here. And that retailers and companies that have already begun their AI journey and are testing and learning and, failing and learning from that are moving up and out what I think of as sort of that exponential growth curve of performance gains, right, that result from AI. And, slower movers today are going to have an increasingly tough time, I think, catching up to those leaders. It's not like it was even 5 or 10 years ago, right?
Oh.
Where, retail could be, followers, whether fast followers or slow followers. Being a follower today, I think, is an increasingly risky strategy. But let's focus in on AI a little bit. Lori, you called out a few minutes ago something that I don't think a lot of people really understand and appreciate is that AI has been around for quite a while. Back from early days of machine learning through all its iterations that we've seen just in the last few years, right? From, Chat GPT to Gen AI and now Agentic AI. So things are moving
Lightning
exponentially,
fast.
right? Can you give us some thoughts around how you're seeing agentic AI applied to a master data foundation? How that changes the game and how that differs from what most people think of as AI?
So you said agentic AI, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me back up a minute because it can be overwhelming when your core job description is to make your grocery company successful, and we're hearing all these terms: AI, generative AI, agentic AI, machine learning. And to simplify it, let me just say, first of all, yes, AI, I call it numerical AI, numbers, AI on numbers, for demand forecasting, optimization of pricing. That's been around for 20, 30 years. But what's new is what is called generative AI. And that's only been around a few years. And generative AI works on text. It works on images. Whereas numeric AI works on numbers. Think of it that way. So generative AI can automatically create product attributes that are what consumers want to see when they do a search. Numerical AI is going to create that demand forecast or that price optimization. And Gary, you asked about something very, very new called agentic AI. And so technology is way ahead of adoption. So let me just say that. As a technology company focusing on retail, I can say, we cannot keep up. And I know if we can't keep up, very few people, certainly adopting it, can keep up. Agentic AI everybody's talking about it. Everybody out there, you'll see agentic AI at NRF and FMI and all those, all the trade shows. But the net of it is that it's new. And it means that you can actually, instead of just having AI tell you insights and recommendations, with agentic AI, it actually can execute actions automatically, so that you can set up governance and rules so that you can sit back and let AI run complete processes without human intervention. That's what it's about. It's about going from knowing to doing, meaning that the AI actually does the work for you. So I want to, and by the way, we are doing agentic AI at Digital Wave in a lot of ways, but I want to caution everybody, it is not something I see rolling out into adoption for at least a few years, even with the best companies. And the reason is you've got to first, number one, get your data right. If you have bad data, you have bad AI. You have to unify your data. You need to have, again, they think of it as the golden record in master data, so that everything is going back to one source of truth. Then you can start to execute numeric AI, as I call it, and generative AI. Only then can you start to really have AI make decisions. And it's coming. And you have to, as I think you and Doug pointed out, start somewhere. I can't stress enough that companies are already experimenting with agentic AI and generative AI, but get the basics right first. And then as you get more and more comfortable, then these AI agents can start to take over manual tasks. So again, it's exciting. We can show examples at, Digital Wave. If you come to see us, we could show you how agentic AI works. But I have to admit, as a business person, I would not recommend jumping right into agentic AI. Get the basics right first.
So, a question to both of you, just building on what Lori just said. especially with agentic AI, when you've got agents off now executing things, doing things on your behalf, it would seem like the retailer, the company has really got to put some guardrails around this stuff, right? So, which brings up the whole topic of governance. Doug, I know this is something that's been discussed at some of the FMI events in the past, but what are you seeing around this area of governance? Do retailers understand the need for it? How are they approaching this? How are they thinking about it?
Yeah, many of them, they're in various stages, Gary. If you think about it, it wasn't too long ago we were talking about governance around just artificial intelligence. And to Lori's point, my goodness, it's moving so quickly. You continue to look at your governance model and go, oh my gosh, now I need to update it for generative AI. Oh my gosh, now I'm going to need to update it for agentic AI. And that's really good for internal. But the one thing that I think is we've seen tipping points on this whole data conversation. Right. I mean, we know that the seven basic attributes to do business, we're at about 70% accuracy, but that's between trading partners. When you get to the consumer facing attributes, it's even worse. And that is not between a trading partner. That is between you and somebody that you're trying to improve. But there's tipping points as to when the industry actually really started getting focused. Smart Label was a tipping point. We had to have complete and accurate data for those individuals that were using the Smart Label platform because they were having a conversation with consumers. AI was another tipping point. Another tipping point that we're going through right now, even though we got a 30-month extension, is the FSMA traceability rule, Rule 204. Another one that is driving complete and accurate data demands. And the next one is going to be agentic AI. And I say, from a business to business standpoint, I agree 100% with Lori. Don't jump in. But boy, is it a tipping point and it is a stake in the ground because your consumer is moving at the pace of technology, even though we as an industry are not moving at the pace of technology. So when is there going to be this disintermediation between the consumer's AI agent and how they shop? Right? It changes your e-commerce page. It changes your brand pages. It having good and complete accurate is going to be like tip of the spear, and then making sure you have plenty of content because you want to be recognized. And now you're asking a computer that has zero emotion in the relationship to do work for you. And if you haven't prompted that thing with every bit of information that you want, it's going to bring you back what it thinks is the most appropriate thing to do. So again, data, data, data. It's just continuing to layer on the importance of this topic.
Yep. Yeah. So Lori, thoughts around governance and what are you seeing there?
Well, again, governance is, to your point, all these tipping points that Doug mentioned, governance is going to continue to change. When we sat back and said, with where the world is heading at the pace of technology now, again, back to, we believe you need to, first of all, have master data, those golden records with what's called native AI, another confusing term, but native AI means the AI is built right into the foundational data management. And that, along with rules for governance that are easy to change, and things like, master data used to be static. The hierarchies were static. The attributes were static. And nowadays, when you've got AI built into a master data platform, you are able to constantly improve and constantly be able to, again, using the right AI tools to make sure that data is very clean before you start getting into, as we talked about, agentic, where the computer starts to make those decisions for you. Right now, I would say, again, things are happening very fast. If you as a retailer don't get into this, you're going to be passed by. But at the same time, I would say where I see the industry right now, the leaders they are now being able to have clean data, and they're getting to that point where now they can start to test agentic AI. And more often than not, companies are still at the point of, in our case, I think of one very large grocer where it's still human approval for everything.
Yeah.
But we recommend, and they just go approve, 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 approve. After so much of that, the system keeps learning. They're going to get to a point where they'll say it's good. It's good. It just approve the throw out exceptions only, and then that'll get better. So I can't emphasize enough. I sound like a broken record, but get your data right. Get your core data right, and the rest will come. And it's happening extremely fast. So if your core data is a mess right now, and you've got data in different silos, start immediately at getting that fixed.
Yeah. So Doug, you touched on something a few minutes ago around agentic AI, and something I don't think a lot of retailers have really thought about and thought through yet. But, the day is rapidly approaching, leading edge is already here, where shoppers have their own agents, right? And I can provide my agent with, here's my list of groceries I need today. I want them delivered by 6 o'clock tonight. Go. And, the retailers' systems have to be prepared for that, because that agent is not necessarily going to that retailer's website caring about the user experience and, this pop-up ad and so on and so forth. It changes that entire process. Let alone the idea, does that begin to open the door to the idea of different retailers bidding on shoppers' orders? Are you hearing retailers beginning to think about and talk about this yet?
I definitely thinking and talking about it. I don't know that I've actually heard conversations about bidding on orders. That's interesting, because I think the one thing that, that I've come to really understand about this is it's about content, right? You've got to have enough content out in the public view in order to be brought into that large language model or small language model, right? Yeah. Those are becoming very popular too. Let's not have a ton of data. Let's have a very smaller set of data that gives me to my answer more quickly. But you got to have that content. It's got to be out there to be ingested. And so if you don't have enough content and you don't have the correct product attributes out there to be ingested, you might not be seen. And we've seen some examples of that today, where brands have like, oh my goodness, we need to get this fixed quickly, because we are, to Lori's point, 2 to 3 years away. And those years are coming quicker and quicker. It was a year and a half ago we were talking about what happens when your search bar engine becomes, obsolete. A year and a half ago, right? And I don't think it's ever going to do that, because that's the great thing about shoppers. They shop the way they shop, when they want to shop, and where they want to shop. But when you give it to a computer to do, it's going to be, I want lasagna, and it's going to go out and it's going to look for all the content out there that talks about ingredients for lasagna, and it's going to pick the mozzarella that it has learned melts best, unless you tell it the brand that you want and where you want it from. So definitely a lot of conversation going on about it. But I haven't heard the customer bidding. That's an interesting angle I'd love to dig into.
Yeah, so something for a future conversation. Yeah. So, something I want to dig into here a little bit, and we've sort of touched on it some different places, but the whole idea of resources, what it takes to play the game today. Historically, we've thought about the idea that, smaller retailers, while they may not have the financial resources of the big guys, can be more nimble, they can move more quickly, and so on. Yet today we're seeing, technology and innovation, like it or not, is a resources-based game. And we're seeing the biggest companies like in Amazon and Walmart, some of the other real big guys, investing massive sums of money into, data, into AI, into innovation, and so on. How can smaller retailers keep up with this? What do you see happening? What do you think this portends for the future of the industry as we look out over the next several years? And I'll just add to that, when I say resources, Certainly financial resources, but the other one that very much is at play here are people resources, skill sets, and so on. So, really curious as to your thoughts, what you see around this, and what you think is going to happen here over the next few years. Lori?
That's a mouthful. I'm trying to remember the whole question.
Resources.
Resources, yes. So I think of the more regional players as compared to the big guys, and even some of the big guys. I mean, we're doing some amazing things like with Aldi, but even they are, first of all, most companies now are still outsourcing their web internet shop online to a third party. That's got to go away pretty soon for grocers. You got to bring that data back inside. And the reason for that is from an omni-channel perspective, to really understand your consumer, you got to make sure the same data is both for your stores as well as for your online experiences for the customer. So I mentioned that. I think from a resource perspective for more of the regional players, the thing I would advise is hire young. These youngsters out there, certainly for some of the AI perspective, they know more than us oldsters do. So that's one thing. I would also say that again, you still need at the top of the company, the executives need to be the ones setting the example. It is happening very fast where when you talk about shopping, agentic shopping, etc., you've got to be able to now look at the data from the outside perspective and say, people are no longer going to be searching based on tagged data. It's going to be searched by large language models, to Doug's point, meaning that if you hit the large language models with the right content and the right data, then that's going to be picked up by consumers using traditional LLMs like ChatGPT or like Grok or like Perplexity, any of those, Google. And we're all experiencing that right now. Your traditional way of searching is going to be gone fairly soon, over the course of the next few years. And it's going to be searched by LLM. So I think I'm going to make a statement here I believe strongly in. The little guys have a really good advantage if they can use generative AI and AI together and think about how they can, in fact, go out and get their brands noticed on the agentic or the large language models, if you will. So, for example, go out as an experiment. I would recommend everybody do this. Go out if you have ChatGPT or you have Google large language model at your fingertips. Go out and try, say, I want to buy Coca-Cola, what have you, 12 ounce, etc., and say, what are the 5 companies in my area that can give me the best price? Just do it. You'll be amazed what it already does. And that's what consumers are already able to do. Yeah. So I would say work backwards as a grocer. I know our company's very experienced with this, to get grocers thinking that way, to say, hey, let's look at what's happening in the world, because you as a smaller, perhaps regional player, you have just as much of an advantage right now as the big guys in terms of getting that search, generative search correct, so that you are being picked up by those large language models.
But fair to say that, the regional guys and the smaller retailers need to understand what's happening here. And then I think probably very important they choose the right solution partners to partner with to help them on their journey. Doug, back to my sort of resources question. FMI's got members from the largest retailers in the country to the smallest retailers in the country. What are your thoughts around all that? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, it's why the big debate is, where do I start? Where do I invest? How do I invest? What's going to give me the best ROI? And I'm going to be a little bit provocative here. Not everybody needs to be the two leaders in this space, really. I mean, if you think about what Lori just said, that's the equalizer. Price, that's commodity trading. I'm gonna beat you on price. Consumers still want a good experience.
Yeah, they do.
Right. And so you need to, if you're a small retailer, small independent, single store, 5 store, 50 stores, and you don't have the resources, do what you do, but do it better than anybody else. And then you find where you can apply technology in order to improve your top line or your bottom line, or improve efficiencies and decision making. Quick decision making is extremely important, right? Yep. Somebody writing code that might have taken 4 hours can now do it in 20 minutes, if that. Writing, 5-6 lines of code took a certain amount of time. Now you can probably write 40 lines of code in that same amount of time. That doesn't mean you need 40 lines of code. Just because it can do more doesn't mean you should do more. What it needs to do is help to inform your decisions in order to continue to do what you do better than anybody else. And don't try to win at the game that the leaders are actually leading in right now, because that's going to be probably a bridge too far. But we have demographic cohorts, and the younger cohort really loves spending time in the grocery store. They look at that as a great place to go on a date. They want to experience food. They had a phone in their face since the time they could actually understand what a phone looked like. And so there's a little bit of like, no, I want to experience life again, not through my palm of my hand, but I want to experience life. And I think that's going to be extremely important in this agentic world, because of the way computers are going to take over for some folks. Where else are brands, and that doesn't matter if it's a brand on a package or a brand on a building, going to have the best opportunity to engage that consumer? It's going to be in the grocery store. Yeah. So that would be my one thing is don't try to win in a game that you can't win at the game that you do really well. And there's retailers out there that you can just talk. They come to the top of your mind when you talk about experience. They come right to the top of your mind.
And I think if I can just add one thing to what Doug's saying, the smaller regional players that provide awesome experiences, something as simple, because everything is now online. And like I said, searching is going away from traditional Google search to generative search, these large language models picking up what's out there. Write blogs about your regional supermarket and why it's so unique. These LLMs pick that up. And then the consumers, when they're searching, it might say, if you're in the North Carolina region, yes, there's the big guys, but hey, have you thought of region player XYZ who does boom, boom, boom unique? And that will get picked up. And so it's a new way of thinking that to Doug's point, people do want to shop in stores now as much as online, maybe even more so. But it's also about making sure you're noticed online to get people to come into the store.
Yeah, no, those are all really good call outs. So this has been a terrific conversation. I know we could keep going for probably several more hours and still have stuff to talk about. But I want to thank you both for your time today. And any last words, Doug?
No, I mean, this is a wild ride. Get help if you have questions.
Absolutely.
There's some great partners out there. I know the three of us are more than happy to have those conversations. Associations are doing a lot to support that journey, as well as our partners, solution provider partners and consulting partners. So just have a lot of conversation, collect a lot of data internally in order to be able to make the best decisions on how to invest in your future.
Lori, any last words?
Slay the silos. Get all of your data into one place. Get a master data management system with built-in AI. Get it, so put all your data together, get it clean, get one version of that golden record, get it right, and then very quickly, and that doesn't take that long nowadays. That's 3 to 6 months. It's amazing how fast that can be done now. Once that's done, then the engine's going to start to work. And I think, as you said, as both you gentlemen said, get help. There are a lot of people that just want to help. And yes, I'm a vendor, but my passion is in the industry. And there's others out there as well that can really love to just talk and spend time. Gary, you're a great resource. Obviously, Doug, you're a great resource. Ask for help.
Yeah, great. Thank you both.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Lori.
Great answers from your perspective. I really learned a lot.
Oh, thank you.
All right, that was great. Doug, thanks. Safe travels later.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you both for having me.
All right, bye-bye now.
All right, take care. Okay, bye.